Hello, YouTube.
Hi, YouTube.
We have a playoff, and we're going to discuss it.
And we're going to break it down. We're going to break down Deion. We're going to break down the Heisman Trophy. Like, subscribe, comment. Thanks for being patient with us. We love you. We love you so much.
Not really. All right, thanks. Hey, group.
Hi, Brandon. Hi, Katie. Hi, Jack. Hi, Noah.
Oh,
I just said group, so that covered everybody. So I didn't.
Well,
really
yeah, but then I just wanted to give individual shout outs.
Well, that wasn't necessary. We could do that throughout the show.
Hey, guess what? Sometimes things are unnecessary. Like roughness, perhaps.
Let's just start the show. Hello and welcome to Unnecessary Roughness, Barstool's college football podcast, brought to you by High Noon Hard Seltzer. We've got bowls coming up. We have Christmas coming up. We have New Year's coming up. We have playoffs coming up. We have so many things that will require you to get together with your friends and drink some. When you do that, get the High Noon Tailgate Pack. It has the pear, the cranberry, and even if you don't want the tailgate pack or you can't find it or whatever, there's so many great flavors and so many great options for High Noon, including the pear, the peach, the lime, the cranberry, the passion fruit, the pineapple, the watermelon, on and on and on and on.
Brandon, you know what we don't talk about enough, but we need to talk about more with High Noon is not only are the drinks delicious and some would say the best, they have great merch too. I'm sitting in Dave's office right now. I'm at the office recording this podcast and I'm looking at all his like the Nooners merch. High Noon colors are not spoken about enough on how cool they look.
No, they got the little UCLA colors going on.
Yeah, they got the nice, like the baby blue, not Carolina blue, baby blue, the gold, and like just like if you go to the Barstool Sports Store, like the Nooners collaborations, Dave always has the coolest shit, obviously, because he's Dave. But we have a ton of stuff. And I feel like maybe I should be repping that more since I can't drink High Noon at this very moment. Maybe I should just be wearing High Noon gear.
Maybe so. High Noon is the best drink for college football and one of the best drinks in America. Drink it, try it, enjoy it, love it. That's High Noon Hard Seltzer. All right. We decided to wait today until after noon when they released the college football playoff 4. We now know where it is. In addition to the college football playoff 4, we're also going to have to talk about a little bit of Heisman. We need to talk about what happened to USC because coming into the weekend, they might have been here. They're not because they embarrassed themselves. And then you have our coworker, Deion Sanders, to Colorado and another job that has been taken. We'll discuss that and anything else that might come up. Bowls will trickle out either through this show. And Katie, I'll ask you, this seems like deja vu. But I'll ask you to monitor if you see official bowl announcements or anything while we're talking, please let me know. Bowl announcements will happen probably through the show and the rest of the afternoon, but we'll handle that on our next show or later this week. For now, though, it is number 1 Georgia against number 4 Ohio State in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia. Number 2 Michigan against number 3 TCU in the Fiesta Bowl in Arizona. I guess, Casey, my first question is this. Was there a moment this weekend after they lost where you wondered if TCU would get in?
There was a very brief moment. It was a very small percentage to me, but going into it, we discussed it. Everybody was discussing it. It depended on how they lost to Kansas State, if they were in fact going to lose the Big 12 championship, and the fact that they forced an overtime. The overtime, granted, it was the mistake at the end, but the play calling was terrible. We know that, but just the way that they lost said to me there was no way they could be left out, not only because of that game in a vacuum, also because of what we had sitting on the outside. Had Alabama only had one loss or, different situations where if USC had won and won handily, then I would have gotten a little bit more concerned for TCU. But just knowing what was on the table and how that game went, I think I was concerned for like 30 seconds, 1% of me was concerned. I thought there was no way they could leave them out.
Well, let's get in the weeds in that game a little bit. We're going to talk about everything, but the TCU Kansas State game, I do think there was a moment where they were perilously close to getting not blown out, but getting beat significantly. They were down 11 points late in the third quarter, and Max Duggan threw a ball right to a TCU defender, and the guy dropped it. And then they end up scoring a touchdown. If he doesn't drop that, they might fall down by 18, and then all of a sudden they're playing catch up for their spot. That didn't happen though. They ended up coming back. One little thing about this game. The play calling at the goal line gets a lot of guff and a lot of people get mad at it. People say this and people say that. Nobody talks about the absolutely atrocious approach and play calling by Kansas State on the final TCU drive of regulation.
Horrible.
TCU got the ball at their 5-yard line, and Max Duggan ran the ball for 90 yards in about 5 plays, and they just kept dropping back into coverage and letting him have 30 yards at a clip. I never saw, like, by the third time Kansas State, he's going to run, maybe have somebody over there. But Duggan was a warrior. They ended up losing the game in overtime by 3 points, but they did not lose their spot. We have number 1 Georgia against number 4 Ohio State, number 3 TCU against number 2 Michigan. Was there a moment this morning? I know there was for me. I thought Ohio State would jump TCU.
I thought that they could. I thought it would be a shame if they did. And I know
why is that?
Because I don't think that the biggest thing that people don't want to see in the playoff this year is to play Georgia. I mean, Georgia is very clearly whatever words you've been using for them for the last few seasons, Georgia is the monster. They absolutely were just toying with LSU yesterday. I understand the argument that if you think Ohio State is a better team than TCU because of what we've seen with TCU, however, I saw very little that would make me say it's okay to reward Ohio State and give Ohio State a matchup with Michigan versus having to play Georgia when they sat at home on conference championship weekend and TCU was undefeated in the regular season. It's not like TCU came in with a loss and then lost the conference championship and still kept that spot. If you go undefeated in the regular season, you play for your conference title and you lose in overtime, you should not be punished for a team that got beat by 3 touchdowns, favored by 10, didn't even make it to conference championship weekend. That's the way that I looked at it. Do I think Ohio State's a better team than TCU? Yes, but you cannot drop TCU.
There's your answer. I don't see it being rewarded and not getting to play Michigan or whatever. Like Ohio State wouldn't be get rewarded by playing Michigan. They would have to play Michigan, and Michigan already beat them by 3 touchdowns. I don't know. When you narrow it down to the top 4, and these are the top 4 teams that deserve it, then I have the 4 and I can compare the 4. I don't have to worry about Alabama. I don't have to worry about anybody else. I'm only comparing the 4. I think it's kind of shitty. Georgia got a shitty draw here. Like I think Ohio State's a better team than TCU, and Georgia's going to have to play Ohio State instead of TCU, where Georgia has they've lost 1 game in the last 2 years. They won a national championship. They went undefeated, and now they have to play a team who, by the way, everybody loves to point out that Ohio State lost by 3 touchdowns to Michigan, and that is true. This team lost 1/2 this year. They were that game at the half was 20-17. It was a tight game. And then for 30 minutes, Michigan outclassed Ohio State. But that was one bad half of football, and people are acting like Ohio State is getting charity here. Like, I don't think they are.
I don't think they're getting charity for being in, but if we're talking about just halves, I mean, they've had other bad halves, but that to me, it doesn't matter how many bad halves you have. It depends on how you win and lose the game. I'm not saying that Ohio State is getting more charity by playing, they would be getting more charity playing Michigan versus Georgia, just because, I mean, yes, we obviously saw what happened. And I was very much on the side, depending on what USC did, but I didn't even think Ohio State could necessarily deserve to be there. However, it's more for TCU. I don't feel like you could say TCU, you went out, you played the extra conference championship game, you made it a close game, you took it into overtime when there were very, very obviously times in that game where they could have gotten killed. Well, your punishment now, because you lost in overtime, is you have to play Georgia, who is clearly right now the favorite to win the national championship. That's more to me. It's like, why would Ohio State get to jump? Now, I understand people want to see Michigan, Ohio State rematch. I would love to see that in the national title if it actually comes to fruition. But I don't think TCU should have to go then play the hardest team in the country just because they made it to their conference championship.
See, I don't believe that Georgia and Michigan are really that different. I don't think you can separate them that much. I think it's the 1A, 1B. Like Michigan any other year, if there wasn't the defending national title champion in front of them, they'd be number 1 right now with what they've done. But anyway, that's all picking nits. It's all absolutely, getting down to
you think they got the 4 teams right? I
think they got 4 teams right. I love the fact that Alabama and Nick Saban went on national TV last night and begged, just basically put his hands out and said, please consider us because our losses are good. Okay, well, I have a resume. Alabama's argument was basically, we're Alabama. Remember us? We're Alabama. So you should put us in because we're better than TCU. Okay, well, I also thought you were better than Tennessee, and I thought you were better than LSU, and you lost both those games. So
and what also hurt Alabama yesterday, even more so, sitting at home, was that LSU got their shit kicked in. So, one of their losses then looked much worse because of the way that LSU played against Georgia. And Jack, Katie, like you guys obviously live on social media way more than me. I can't remember there ever being a coach that got that much time in the middle of a different conference's championship game to do that. Like, I know that, I can obviously like A&M, like Jimbo got a little bit of time in 2020, but I don't think it was 10 minutes at halftime of the Big Ten championship.
I mean, he's the greatest college football coach ever.
No, I know. I'm not saying he shouldn't have. I've just never seen anything like that.
The biggest case of politicking I can ever remember is 2006 when Ohio State and undefeated Michigan played, and Ohio State won 42-39, and then they decided it's going to be a rematch, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, and Florida and Urban Meyer went and politicked. And I don't remember where he went. I don't remember if he was what TV shows, but I remember it was like he canvassed the country and got Florida in the game, and of course they ended up winning the game by a lot. Jack, do you think they got 4 teams right?
Yes.
Without question. Who would you put at 3?
I mean, I don't know. I think I would still put TCU, especially because it's like, do you want the rematch immediately? But is that how you're supposed to think about it? I think that's probably what the discussion was within wherever they were in Texas over the past few hours and 24 hours. It's like, how do we go about this?
I don't have a problem with them if they went that way. Listen, again, this is picking nits again, but I wouldn't have had a problem if they said, you know what, this is a TV product. This is a product.
Yeah.
Something that we're going to put out there for the people. And buddy, Ohio State, Michigan in a playoff would be gigantic. Let's do it. But I don't know if it's a risk, or I don't know if I even care about it like this. If Ohio State were to beat Georgia and Michigan beats TCU, and then you have the 2 teams playing for a national title, the world might eat itself. This is going to be this will be maybe the biggest championship game of all time.
Yeah.
But
then it's like, if you're looking at it from an entertainment perspective, would you rather have the guaranteed game between Ohio State and Michigan? All that being said, I think they got the 4 teams right for sure.
Let me go devil's advocate. Let me go one thing I do think they got right. Okay. I believe all of you are under the belief that TCU going into yesterday and coming out of yesterday deserved a little bit better spot than Ohio State based on what they did all season. I think that's a little overrated, but whatever. It's a belief held by a lot of people. What they did was they put Ohio State in at 4. And there's a lot of people out there that don't think Ohio State deserved it. However, if Ohio State goes into this playoff and beats number 1 Georgia and in Atlanta and then number 2 Michigan back to back, they will have deserved every absolute piece, every bit of the national title. They will have went out and earned it.
No question. And back to the rematch versus, the semifinals versus the national championship. I knew Alabama fans were down even worse than I anticipated when I tweeted out during the Pac-12 championship, once it was very obvious that USC was going to be left out because not only did they lose, Caleb Williams gets hurt, they got embarrassed. But I said, I would love to see a scenario where if Ohio State can beat Georgia, which we know is an if, but if they can, Michigan and Ohio State would potentially rematch in the national title game. And I had Alabama fans saying, a Big Ten national championship, that'd be the lowest rated championship we've seen in forever. And every single person that said that to me all had some sort of Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, ass kissing type of profile. And I think that is insanity. I mean, you just said it too. Not only would we get one of the most heated rivals in college sports playing for a national title, you also get the fact that Ohio State is not a bad football team. They are very good. Yes, they lost by $1 billion, but the way that everything else came to fruition, they deserve to be in it. I sat up there and said, I'd rather see Alabama, but once everything played out, Ohio State deserves to be there. That would be the most awesome national championship we've seen in forever.
I forgot you were arguing that Alabama should have gotten in.
No, I said I would want them to get in more.
I forgot we had that argument last Monday.
Last Monday. I mean, I rewatched.
Last Monday might as well have been 4 years ago.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I rewatched the college football show just because I really wanted to see. I don't know. I didn't rewatch the whole thing. It was on in the background, but I did catch the part where the arguments were happening, and Dan played so perfectly where he was on the side of wanting to see Alabama, like I was, like Dave was, but then he would also take shots at Michigan, and I was just like, this man is just towing that line perfectly. However, I also think that, we said that obviously fell apart. I think if USC would have played a better game on Friday night, and it would have, especially if Caleb Williams got hurt the way that he did, and they still kept it respectable, you could still make an argument that maybe USC deserved to be in that spot, even though they had lost to Utah twice. But because of the way that game played and the fact that Caleb Williams got hurt, there was no way you could keep that there. And there was so much argument happening, when in reality, if the playoff committee left TCU out because they lost, that would be I think it would have been a travesty. I truly do.
Well, the thing about USC is we got the result we probably needed to get there. I listen, USC was a good story this year, and in year one, it was great that they got close, and it's great they might have the Heisman winner. That defense just is not playoff worthy. That defense was really, really bad, soft and pathetic. And it's probably best that Utah handle business the way they handle business against USC, because I just don't know what any of these three playoff offenses would have done to USC's defense.
I think USC has quite possibly the worst tackling I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well, just calling it tackling seems like an insult.
That's fair. And I know that Lincoln Riley teams, in the past, they've been knocked for their defense, and that's, neither here nor there. That game, it was like watching junior high kids trying to tackle Texas State championship varsity teams. It was insane.
I have a question when it comes to USC and Caleb Williams the other night. Don't get mad at me for the question. It's just a question.
Oh, you're fine.
Was Caleb Williams limp a little bit? He kind of knew where the cameras were on that, right?
The only reason I don't think so is because, one, I think that if he wasn't fully hurt, I think that he would have been able to be more of a dual threat. It was very clear that he had gotten much more one-dimensional, that they didn't have to worry about him scrambling. And when he did scramble to get the first down late in the game, that it was very gingerly done. He was very tender. I don't think Caleb Williams, the competitor that he is, would have milked it if it wasn't as bad as it was, because I think he would have been able to do what he normally does.
Just seemed like he knew where the cameras were on that limp. I did listen. There were a couple of plays late where he would be going half ball out, running, and then he doesn't get the first down, and all of a sudden the limp's back. I just whatever.
But the devil's advocate of that is the devil's advocate for, I think, a lot of those plays. The ones where he didn't take off and run, where he normally would have, told me he was very injured, because there were a lot of times where you'd sit there and you'd be like, if Caleb wasn't hurt, this is a completely different offensive play call. But I also just don't. I think he's too much of a competitor. But that's just my 2 cents.
All right, Saturday, December 31st.
Katie had something to say. I want to hear what she had to say.
I was gonna say, with a game that big, you're on the camera 24/7. I feel like you see people on the sidelines get picked up. Like, you're going to be on it regardless. I feel it's more adrenaline. Once the play is stopped, you can take a breath and the pain hits.
Hey, I was just asking a question.
No, you're not. And I gave my opinion.
All right, Saturday, December 31st at 4:00 Eastern. The Fiesta Bowl with number 2 Michigan against number 3 TCU. Number 3 TCU went 12-0 this year. Then they lost their conference championship game in overtime to Kansas State. Michigan goes 13-0. Their conference championship game followed the same script of a lot of their games this year.
Mm-hmm.
Just off the top of my head, they trailed Ohio State at halftime, absolutely blitzed them after the half. Purdue last night, close game at half.
They were winning by. They were winning by 2 to who was it? Was it Rutgers?
They were trailing Rutgers, I think, at half, or they was close.
It was like 16-14 or something.
Then they destroyed them. Like, they're a second half team. They're built to wear you down, to throttle you. But now you have Michigan against TCU. Katie, I don't want to give you an assignment, but if anybody sees any lines for these games that might have come out already.
1 second. They came by.
Go ahead and shout those out to me.
It's Georgia -6.5, -7, and then TCU +9.5 against Michigan.
Well, I love Ohio State.
Brandon, I know, and I agree with you for this year. I know we saw Georgia and Michigan in this very calendar year. As we pointed out, I think these two teams are different. I think this matchup would be different. But if Ohio State can beat Georgia, which I don't think is crazy, I do not think is a crazy thing to say, the world might explode, not just because of the potential matchup and rematch between Ohio State and Michigan, just because Georgia, I mean, they're so fucking good. But if CJ Stroud and that offense can get rolling, I mean, it's not crazy. It's the one thing that I will say that I really like about the fact that it's Georgia, Ohio State is that we know that Ohio State, while they got blown out by Michigan, we do know that, and that's a fair thing to say. I don't anticipate there being two wildly bad blowouts in the semifinals. I don't. I'm not saying that I think Ohio State's going to win right now. We have lots of time. We have almost a whole month for me to convince myself one way or the other. But I don't see Georgia, Ohio State being, a 55-20 type of game.
No, I don't either.
But I say that, but then I also think Michigan would kick the shit out of them again. So I'm talking myself into a pretzel here.
You think if they played again, Michigan would kick the shit out of Ohio State?
I think they'd win. I do not think they would kick the shit out of them. No,
you just did.
No, I'm saying that I said that last week. Like I think Michigan would win again. I don't know if it would be as bad. I also don't think Ohio State would be favored by 9.5 either.
I think they done fucked up giving Ohio State new life. I listen. This is a really good team, and Smith and Jigba is already talking about how he's going to play. You're going to get Travion Henderson back. This is Georgia didn't get screwed because it's the 4-team playoff. But if I have a choice between playing Ohio State and TCU, my God, do I want to play TCU? Ohio State's going to be healthier, and again, everything says, "Oh, they got blown out by Michigan. They got blown out. They got blown out." That was a close game that turned into a rout at the end. I don't think that
it was a rout.
No, it wasn't though. It was
Brandon. They were winning. Michigan was winning, and they had one rushing yard, and then all of a sudden the rushing game got.
But that's in the second quarter when they were still losing. That game was close until
it was definitely close. But then once Ohio State realized we don't stop JJ McCarthy and the passing game, then we're not going to win this game. And then all of a sudden Donovan Edwards rattles off 200 yards. I mean, it wasn't like it was like garbage time timeouts. I mean, Michigan kicked the shit out of them.
I don't think they did. I think that
they did.
I don't think they did. I'm sorry.
They won by 3. They won by 3 touchdowns.
Is my mic not on? Like, I understand they won by 3 touchdowns, and that was a close game in the third quarter, and Ohio State just a switch flipped, and Michigan broke it off in them. But that were 3 quarters that wasn't like that, and I think if they play again, it's a lot like Alabama and Georgia last year. Alabama beat them by 17 points, and then the next time they played, they lost by 15. Like this.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I agree. I'm saying if you have that opinion moving to another game, a rematch, but to sit there and say that Michigan didn't kick the shit out of them that's crazy. They did.
I don't think Michigan kicked the shit out of them. I think Michigan won going away at the end.
I mean, if you look at that box score on a play-per-play basis, Ohio State did play better than Michigan. Their success rate was much better, which looks at like how you do on first, second, and third down. And what Michigan did really well, which is a great way to win games, but it's not as sustainable, they just had great explosive plays. It's much more easy to replicate success rate on first, second, and third down than explosive plays. They did beat the shit out of them when it came to explosive plays, but on a play-to-play basis, Ohio State did stand up pretty well against Michigan. Now, that's not how you judge a game from a Final Four perspective. So, but there is room, there is ways to be like, hey, Ohio State didn't play as bad as the final score.
But Michigan TCU is what's at hand here. Okay. Mm-hmm. Can TCU beat Michigan? Not everybody at once.
I was taking a huge sip of water. I apologize. Can they? Yes. Will they? No. And the can they is, I don't think it's 100% that Michigan will win that game, but I do think it's a much lower percentage than I think anybody else was in that matchup.
I think the answer to can they is no, and the answer to will they is also no.
That's fair.
That's what I think.
The weird thing with Michigan, and I agree with that Michigan deserves to be in the same breath as Georgia for this season at least. We'll see what happens, in the playoff, but Michigan has played very, very close games with a lot of teams that do not have any business being in close games with them in the first half. That part is a little bit scary for Michigan. Now, obviously in the second half, they blow them out. They did the same thing last night with Purdue, But when you look at what TCU can do on offense, it does kind of say, well, do they let TCU hang around enough to where that game gets a little weird? I do not think that's going to happen. Again, we have an entire month to talk ourselves in and out of these questions. But I do think that because of the way Michigan plays these games, it wouldn't be crazy to me if TCU is in it until the end of the game and then Michigan finds a way to win by a couple touchdowns. It also wouldn't be crazy to me if they beat them by 40.
So the way I look at it is the way Kansas State beat TCU yesterday is they just kept pounding the ball to Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn's 5'6", 130 pounds. They just kept pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding. I think he had like 25, 26 carries. And eventually by the fourth quarter, it was harder to tackle him and they were breaking it. That's exactly how Michigan plays football. They're gonna give it to their running backs and give it to their running backs and give it to their running backs and use that offensive line and lean on you and lean on you and lean on you. And finally, like Ohio State did late in the third and fourth quarter, you're going to collapse. You're going to break. Then your will be taken from you. And I don't think TCU matches up to play that style of football at all. When I say these things, it sounds like I'm taking shots at TCU. I'm just not. But you talk about Michigan being in close games with worse teams. TCU was in a close game all season long. Their entire season was a close game outside the Iowa State game. They were never in a comfortable spot against anybody.
No, they had the TCU magic, and Dan tweeted it yesterday, and he was obviously right up until overtime, but he said this game is setting up for a classic TCU win the way that they've been winning all year. However, he said that, and I think I know I felt that way watching it. I'm watching it. They're down.
I was shocked when they got to overtime and lost. I thought they figured it out again.
Yep, like when they went down by 8 and they scored the touchdown to cut it to the 8-point lead, I was just like, holy shit, they're going to do it again. And, regardless of how you think they would match up against Alabama or Tennessee or Ohio State or whoever was arguing with whoever, if you go undefeated and you win your conference championship, there's zero doubt. And when they hit the 2-point conversion easily, by the way, I mean, that was just, it looked like it was just, they could do it in their sleep. I was like, yep, TCU's got this hypno-toad magic thing going, and then they're going to have to run up against somebody in the playoff where that's potentially not going to work. So I felt the same way. I was like, did their magic, did the pumpkin, or did it turn back into a pumpkin at midnight and overtime? Is that what happened?
If you look at Michigan, we never saw any passing offense from them, and then all of a sudden, everyone, even including this podcast, there's no way they have to run the ball. They have to run the ball. They will change it, and it worked. What goes to say that TCU can't in the month figure out how to get a rush defense? Not to say.
Let me talk about that first point you made, because you're exactly right. Michigan didn't show a pass offense all year, and then all of a sudden in the first half against Ohio State they got it, and last night against Purdue they got it too. Like McCarthy, when he rolls out, he is dangerous as hell. Those tight ends can catch everything. Those receivers, Ronnie Bell and a couple others, are really good. All of a sudden they have a passing game that can make you sweat. And that's something that either they held back or they just developed late in the season. But you can't develop toughness. You can't develop, you can't really develop a defense for 5 350-pound guys punching you in the mouth every play. I just don't know over the next month if they can develop a defense capable of slowing down the Michigan running game. No, I could be wrong. And there's other ways to attack that. Maybe you force turnovers when they do throw.
They held Deuce Vaughn yesterday to 20 or 83 yards on 20 carries. It's not.
That's not what. Hold on. What was his final stats though? That wasn't what he ran for.
That was his final stats.
He was at 119 in the fourth quarter.
Nope.
Am I just?
I see 130 yards, 1 touchdown, 26 carries, long of 44.
Yeah.
No, dude.
That's right.
I'm reading the stat sheet.
I was looking at the wrong box score. I apologize.
That's okay. That happens.
Hey,
he's had over 100 rushing yards, I think, in 26 30 games.
He's right to a point. Like he had 19 carries for 83 yards in the fourth quarter, and then he broke off that 44-yarder. And changed his stats a little bit.
I know that you were exaggerating by the numbers to say he's 130 pounds, but did you feel like they were reminding us how much he can lift and bench way more than normal?
No, I just
maybe it was just something I was noticing from a sideline standpoint.
I thought Darren Sproles probably had somebody on the camera crew or something like every time they mentioned Deuce Vaughn, we had to talk about Darren Sproles and his performance in the Big 12 title game.
It's a good point.
That being said,
it's
though,
just, go ahead.
most people don't watch Kansas State, like we do, but even us, we probably don't have the audio on for a Kansas State game. So it does feel over the top without a doubt, but I don't necessarily blame them because it's like, that was Kansas State's like national championship, even though they won and they're not in the playoff, but man, they were mighty close. If they beat Tulane and beat Texas, I think they would have had now that's a pretty serious,
Yeah.
You should have done this.
Yeah.
But all that being said, Kansas State, great season, and Chris Kleiman out over there, we should give some credit to him because he's put up a hell of a program coming over from a great program he had over in North Dakota.
Yeah, no, he's a very good coach, very solid coach. They play good football. I don't know why something jogged my memory of something that we got to talk about, and it's just in the different game. But Kirby Smart went for 2 up 48-23 in the fourth quarter. He went for 2. What a cunt!
No, that was fine.
I thought it was awesome.
Why was it fine?
I thought it was awesome.
Well, not awesome. It was just like I think it put them to it made it a 3-score game.
No, it didn't. They were up 26.
I personally thought it was.
You're right. It was 48-23.
There was no reason to do it. There was no reason other than he just wanted to pile on the points. The reason I think it's awesome is because he's not playing some, Sisters of the Blind. He's playing LSU and Brian Kelly. And he's just like, I'm just going to do this against this LSU team. I thought it was awesome. If I was a coach, I would do those petty things too.
But I asked George, I asked Twitter, I was like, why did he do that? And George was like, because of 2019. When
19. They didn't forget that.
Okay, but it's just wild to me because you go for 2 against a team that has a different coach, an entirely different coaching staff, and none of the players are the same. But
Brandon,
all the fans are the same.
That logo is the same.
All the boosters, they don't forget that it's the colors, right? Yep. Obviously, I know what you're saying, but it's like, hey, you made you embarrassed us in 2019, which is fine. That's how football works. You had
that's fine.
Team,
that's why I think
we're gonna embarrass you.
Brandon.
That's fine, but this will, and we all know it. I don't know when it's coming. It'll come back. It will
definitely
come back.
But Brandon, let's call it what it is. You're a petty person. I'm a petty person. I would say overall, this podcast is pretty petty. You know that if you had the opportunity to flex like that on a team that had embarrassed you, regardless of who was coaching, it's not like it's Jesus Christ on the sideline. It's also Brian Kelly. You would do the same thing.
Oh yeah, but I'm a dick. All right. So I just want everybody to look at this beautiful beard right here.
I love the beard.
I love it. For a while because its days are numbered. I'm a little tired of it, so I'm gonna have to get rid of it soon. And when I do, boys, I'm gonna tell you how I'm gonna get rid of it. With one of the best razors out there, Bic, just launched a new line of razors for men and women. It's called Bic Easy Rinse, and this is one of the reasons when I get a beard, I don't shave because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna shave, and then it's gonna get clogged up, and then I'm not gonna shave right. No. Bic, their new line of Easy Rinse razors feature a first of its kind reverse blade design patented anti-clogging technology. So all the little hair that you shave off, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You just keep that sharp blade and you keep everything. That is one of the most frustrating things about it. Takes me about 45 minutes to shave my beard right now, but not with the new Bic the Easy Rinse razor.
Well, and I know that, obviously shaving your face sounds terrible. I am very glad that I don't have to.
I agree about shaving your legs. That sounds awful.
I was about to say shaving your legs, not fun. It is not a good time. And one of the worst things, and Katie, I know you've probably experienced this too, like right when you get to the point where you need to change razors, but you also need to shave your legs in that moment, and you go and you shave it and you immediately cut yourself because the razor is clogged up. And it's just like, it wasn't like it was a gross razor, but it was just a little bit too far. It's not going to happen with Bic because these new razors, it's like, no, like when it's time to replace it, you'll know. But in the meantime, you're not going to have blood dripping down your legs because you've nicked yourself up because you just didn't change your razor in time.
They have anti-clogging technology that results in a smoother shave with less irritation. They figured out the perfect amount of space between the blades to allow for easier rinsing and no clogs. Buy them now, the Easy Rinse razor from Bic on Amazon and Walmart.com. And starting in January, they can be found in retail stores nationwide. Start living a life less clogged. That
And
sounds good.
less clogged is good. I would make the argument for any body part that you're shaving. A lot of
Use-
body parts you have to shave.
All right, go to Amazon.com and use the code 20EasyRinse. That's 20EasyRinse for 20% off and the Bic Easy Rinse on Amazon.com today. Now,
All right.
Good
I
stocking
have something to
stuffers.
say,
well, go ahead, Jack. I would like for everybody to have something to say. Go.
and I thank you for allowing me to have this platform. But within college football this year, right? We walked in and we said, "Oh, what are we supposed to just wait for? Ohio State and Alabama to play in the national championship." Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Now that was pretty fair because I thought that was going to happen as well. But this year we've had a pretty good season. A lot of upsets. We had the rebirth of I wouldn't say historic team, but a team that used to be very good. And then
Several.
also we have TCU in the playoff. Alabama didn't make the playoff. We have now potentially one of the most anticipated national championship games ever between Ohio State and Michigan if things break a certain way. There was a lot of great stories. UConn made a fucking bowl game. New Mexico State made a bowl game. Pretty good season. It goes to show that, and I think the playoff expanding will help it even more. But right now, the parity of the sport's only getting better. And then we also have a guy who we'll get to eventually out west, who's one of the most anticipated college football coaches in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
And so all that being said, I would say this was we always talk about 2007. It wasn't 2007, but it was a great regular season.
I think we'll maybe on our next show, we can do the regular season recap and just go through everything and hand out awards and stuff like that. But yeah, it was not only you mentioned a team coming back from the dead, a historic team. I think you were talking about USC, Tennessee as well. I mean, there was a moment where Tennessee owned this regular season, and there's so many great things that happened. One thing that you said right there, we could have the most anticipated national championship game ever. I think if Georgia beats Georgia, Michigan would be also an incredible national title game.
I'm not, and I'm also excited for the playoff. I mean, you said it very well, Brandon. I think TCU is going to have to play the game of their lives. I think they're almost like a better Purdue, where, but Purdue was in the game last night, but they had some brutal turnovers specifically within their own territory. But they need to play the perfect game. But at the end of the day, it's a 10-point spread. That's a pretty good vibe on what the market's setting. That market's pretty good because there's billions of dollars on the line. And 10-point spread doesn't mean we're going to have an awful game. That's not 17 points, Cincinnati, Alabama, or Oklahoma, LSU. Da, 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 da.
One of the arguments that Alabama used to try to get in the playoff was, we'll play a better game against Georgia or Michigan than TCU will. First of all, I don't know that. Secondly, Alabama's history does tell me, that might be true. But thirdly, and this was the biggest thing about this playoff, it ain't about getting the 4 teams you think is going to put on the best games. It's about getting the 4 teams that deserve to be there. And could Alabama potentially play better against Georgia, Michigan? Sure, why not? Alabama shouldn't have lost 2 games. Alabama didn't beat anybody. Alabama does not deserve under the parameters to be there. TCU deserves it. Every time TCU lined up against a ranked team, they won this year. Can't say that about Alabama. TCU went on the road and won tough games. Can't say that about Alabama. So everything about this playoff is right. And this argument that they're not 4 best teams. No, they're the 4 most deserving teams. And people want to go in their mind and say, oh, this team's better than that team. Well, why didn't they show it on the field?
Well, and that's the same people. And I do feel like the same people who are making the argument are probably also in the same camp that you and I are of expanding the playoff. But the same people are like, oh, well, the 4 best teams are X, Y, Z. This is what we need to do. Well, you're not going to figure that out in meeting rooms. And as soon as TCU lost, Alabama fans switched from trying to make the argument of why they deserve to get in over Ohio State, which I felt like was a fair argument going into the weekend, to trying to argue that they deserve to get over TCU because they're a, quote, better team. Nick Saban even threw out gambling lines. Like, well, sir, you barely covered any of the games that you played this year. So let's just not even get into that. But that's, to me, it's like, if you're sitting here making the argument that you think Alabama is a better team than TCU, you should also be in the same camp the playoffs should be expanded, because until we expand the playoffs to have those games played, you're just having people in a meeting room decide that.
Saban saying you should put us in because we'd be favored in the games is one of the most beautiful things I've ever. You know who else you were favored against? Tennessee and LSU, and you lost both of them.
And also the games where they were heavily favored, they rarely covered. So it's like that, to use gambling and to use any type of, like, it was almost like he was appealing to, and I'm not saying that we're this way at Barstool, because we're not, we're very responsible, but appealing to like the degenerate gambler type of side of things. It was like, what are you talking about? Like, you weren't favored you were favored in games you lost. What does that have to do with shit?
All right. So we got the
It
playoff.
does seem like we have the New Year's Six Bowl.
Okay.
Like that. I want to do it for later.
No. You got the bowls right now?
Yeah.
Give them to me.
So Rose Bowl is Utah, Penn State. It looks like
So slow down. I think that is a pretty solid matchup. I think the thing you got to look at these teams that might have some opt-outs is, do they have young players who could be exciting? Like, I'm going to use Clemson for an example in a minute. There's nothing really intrinsically exciting about Clemson, but now that Cade is playing the way he's playing and he's going to start the Orange Bowl, they're exciting. And I think Drew Aller might get some big time reps for Penn State in this. And Utah is going to bring it because they want to win a Rose Bowl desperately. So I love Penn State, Utah in the Rose Bowl. Continue.
it looks like the initial line is Penn State -1.5.
Oh, yeah. Oh, pick them. That's going to be a great game.
Cotton Bowl, it's Tulane, USC. USC is a 4.5 point favorite.
Dear God. Okay. That's Tulane, the group of five, gets to take a shot at one of the great programs in the history. What a massive, massive, massive W for Tulane just to play in this game. So that's going to be something. All right. Continue.
I can't believe that the opening line is only 4.5 in that.
I just don't know if we see, and I know that he has to come back next year. I can see a world where Caleb Williams doesn't play.
And people will lose their fucking mind over it, but I would agree.
Is it only a sophomore? So doesn't he have to have?
He's got to come back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When I say I agree, if he doesn't want to play, again, that's another argument for the expansion. Like, if guys aren't playing because they're trying to protect themselves.
Well, he got hurt.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he just battled through a game
because he's hurt.
Yeah.
Like, if he's not 100%, he shouldn't play that game.
All right. Go ahead, Katie.
Sugar Bowl, Kansas State versus Alabama. Alabama is a 5.5 point favorite.
I am responsibly hammering Kansas State. This is one of those games that will matter to one team and not to the other. And that's just how often do we see it. And Kansas State's going to give every bit of them to win this game.
And
I thought you were going to go the other way.
No.
Oh, no.
Will Alabama be pissed and be like, look at you, look at us, fuck you guys?
Who's going to be pissed? You think Will Anderson's playing? You think Bryce Young's playing?
Fair enough.
And also, I mean, we saw Georgia do it a few years ago against Texas. They got left out of the playoff and they were like, fuck this. We're not playing for something. We're not going to turn it on. That's the Texas is back meme. That's that game. What, 2019 or 18 or whatever year that was. I also loved the arguments too. And I know we've all seen them, but it was like, oh, well, TCU lost to Kansas State with their backup quarterback. Folks, Will Howard's been starting the entire second half of the season. The only game he didn't start after he went in for an injured Adrian Martinez was the game that Kansas State lost. This is not a backup quarterback anymore. Will Howard in this offense, like, yes, he started the season as a backup, fine. He is their starter, and they are a much better offense with him.
All right. So I assume that leaves the Orange Bowl for Clemson, Tennessee.
Which is the most orange bowl you're ever going to get.
The greatest Orange Bowl ever.
I love that game.
And it's Clemson -2.5, seems.
I wish they could go color rush and both wear their orange jerseys.
That'd be so funny. It sucks Hendon Hooker's not playing.
I'd like to say something about that.
Oh, boy.
It is just universally accepted that Alabama should be ahead of Tennessee because of two things. Tennessee got railroaded by South Carolina, and that's a fair point. And number two, because Hendon Hooker got hurt and they have a backup quarterback. In 2014, Ohio State had a third-string quarterback, and they went and won a national title. You're kind of insulting the guys behind the guy if you say, oh, the starting quarterback's out, they're done, take them off everything. They played one game with Joe Milton as the starting quarterback, and I understand that Vanderbilt doesn't have a great reputation, but this wasn't a terrible Vanderbilt team. They beat Florida, they beat Kentucky, they won 5 games. Tennessee played one game without Hendon Hooker at quarterback, and they won 56-0 against Vanderbilt. So
I hate to, toot my own horn there, but I called that game because I was like, they're going to try to kill Vanderbilt. I do think that when I say I hate to see them playing without Hendon Hooker, it's not because I'm trying to discredit what I think Joe Milton could do. Although, when Joe Milton played at Tennessee, very different than his few chances he had at Michigan. I just think that, Hendon Hooker, you talk about storylines in college football and you talk about how awesome that Tennessee team was. He was very clearly the superstar of that, and they had weapons, and I understand that. But to see Tennessee with Hendon Hooker and how long he's been in college football and everything he's had to do, play Clemson in the Orange Bowl, would be pretty awesome.
Katie, is there a bowl selection show tonight, or are we going to get these things trickling out through the afternoon?
I think there's a technical one, but that's gonna be later. But I'm already getting like Southern Miss versus Rice just got announced to Lending Tree. Like, I'm not gonna interrupt to say that, but they're slowly kind of churning.
I think that the show on ESPN is like just continuously running for a while.
It's till 4:00.
Hold on, Casey. Everybody on this stream whose team is getting ready for a bowl game, everybody raise your hand. All right. Jack, do you know where UConn might be going?
You notice I'm not wearing a Texas A&M football. I'm just wearing Texas A&M University. Like, I still went to school there, but nothing says football today. That would be crazy.
I'm wearing my Dogs Win Again in beautiful Mossy Oak.
I did point that out before we started recording. I was like, of course we would be wearing our school's gear today. Sucks. I mean, must be nice to be preparing for a bowl game.
Oh, Katie just grabbed her team.
UConn's going to play Myrtle Beach. Marshall in the Myrtle Beach Bowl.
All right. I've heard maybe Gator or Outback for us. I haven't locked in yet. It could be.
Murphy's for you guys is projected to the ReliaQuest Bowl versus Illinois.
That's the Outback Bowl.
Yeah, these. I don't trust these until I actually see them.
It's ReliaQuest, I believe. But yeah, so I've seen this projected to the Gator Bowl against Notre Dame, against North Carolina. I've seen this projected against Iowa. Boy, they're gonna keep fucking around me before they turn me into the old me.
That it would be the gift that just continues to give.
I'd have to go to that one, right?
I'd have to. I mean, you'd have no option. The only way you wouldn't go is if it was like directly conflicted with the Arizona Bowl.
A couple more topics and then we'll get out of here because I kind of want to get this out to people.
I agree.
But the Heisman is kind of a mess. And it's because we stopped giving it away for the right awards. We just started giving it as soon as a player would lose a game, we crossed them off. CJ Stroud lost game, we crossed them off. Hendon Hooker lost game, got hurt, crossed them off. And then Caleb Williams was left standing, but then he lost a game and there was nobody left to cross off and give it to. So I got these stupid arguments last night. Should be Stetson Bennett. No, LOL, no, it should not be. I thought there was a moment there yesterday where Max Duggan could steal it and could come up and get it. But I think ultimately because of the early voting, and I think Caleb Williams is probably going to win the award, but it's still kind of a mess.
If you're a Heisman voter and you cast your votes before championship weekend, should you have your privileges pulled away?
I agree with that. The only problem is I think Dan Wolken tweeted that, and I can never agree with Dan Wolken.
You're an asshole if you do that. Like, you're basically just saying that you do not care about championship teams. Max Duggan, he had the turnover in the end zone that was very, very, that's bad no matter what, but at the time, the time of the game and the way the game was going, I think that hurt him a little bit. Jack, I believe you said it perfectly on Friday night in the group text. It's like he went from 1% to 10%, depending on how he played. I think that the biggest thing that helps Caleb Williams stay at the top of my list is that he didn't have an abysmal game just because he had an abysmal game. He had an abysmal game, which really wasn't even that bad, because he got hurt. When he became one-dimensional, it was because he was hurt. And that's why, going back to the conversation we had of, do I think he was milking it? I don't. Because of that, the way he's played all year, and the reason USC has been at the top of their conference, at the top of the country, is very clearly only because of the offense, because the defense is horrible. The tackling is horrible. His numbers are still crazy. And he very clearly got hurt. And that's one of the main reasons they got beat the way that they did. And then TCU didn't win. So
I think they got beat the way they did because their defense was a bunch of pussies.
I do think that played into it. There's no doubt. I mean, I don't think that just because Caleb Williams got hurt. However, I think they got beat the way that I think it was as embarrassing as it was, because Utah didn't have to worry about him doing what he normally does because they knew that he was injured. And, like we mentioned a few times where he did take off, he still was doing it at like a half, like 50%. He wasn't going balls to the wall. I would give it to Caleb Williams, and I understand there's going to be like, well, that's because you love USC. It's like, who else are you going to give it to?
I got an answer. I don't really care about the team success as much as it's an individual award. I go back to Hendon Hooker. I know, and Hendon Hooker got hurt, and then all of a sudden we just cut his head off and threw him away. He's not in the Heisman anymore. Why? But when he was playing, the guy was the best player in the country. I think Hendon Hooker led a renaissance at Tennessee this year. And because his team ended up, losing, we just forgot about him. And
I think that the way that they played against Georgia, which obviously I had to hear about forever because of how inefficient the offense was in comparison, I think Georgia making him play the way that he did hurt the Heisman argument, because he wasn't hurt yet. And they couldn't do shit against Georgia.
Well, I don't think anybody else could either. So, whatever it is. All right. One more topic and then we can get out of here because we can leave so much. First of all, I guess now we're going to go to 2 a week. We'll record, this one's on Sunday, but we're going to go to a Monday, Thursday recording schedule for the foreseeable future. Is that correct?
Yes. So this week it'll be Sunday, Thursday, and then moving forward, it'll be Monday, Thursday. And then obviously we'll have a little bit of a different schedule for the holidays, but the episodes will still come out, and we'll have our instant reaction for the semifinals and the national championship.
Jack, is that a mistake? Are we giving up the sweet nectar of 3 shows a week or what?
Well, I mean,
Hold on. Let me think about this. No, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jack. I just realized something. This December with the transfer portal and let's talk off the air. We might need to go. We might need to stay.
I feel like this is a conversation we have not recording.
Yes.
Because we know what happened.
Some people like the inside baseball, quote unquote, of it. Yeah. I think people would still listen to 3. There's obviously a drop off at this point of the season, no matter what.
You want to go Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday?
Let's talk about it off the air.
Yeah, let's talk about it off the air.
Anybody wants to vote for Sunday? Anybody wants to vote for Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday? They can.
Well, I'm going to put this out there, then we'll talk off air. Like, how much is going to happen between a Thursday and a Sunday, other than like random?
Probably a lot.
I think with conference being done, I think in the next 3 days we're going to get like all the entries of the portal and then coordinators.
Yeah, but then they're going to start committing to other places.
That's true. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying let's talk about it off air, because
all right.
You know what we do here? We talk about it on air and then we come to a conclusion. Fine. And then people are like, well, why didn't you stick to that? It's our thing. It's our forte.
Let's ask everybody. If you want 3, tweet at us. If you want 2, tweet at us. Just tweet at us.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Now we move on to the last topic and then we'll get out of here. Deion Sanders is the new coach at Colorado. He is going to be in the Power 5. It's his first opportunity to Power 5 job. He's going to be fascinating to watch over the next month, because it depends on, the quality of the job he does there is contingent on the players he gets, just like it is everybody. But I think he's going to have a chance to get a lot of good players. Casey, your initial thoughts?
I think it's a phenomenal hire for Colorado. Obviously, the excitement around the program has probably never been higher from just getting a guy in day one. I saw a lot of people saying, oh, well, no one's going to want to go to Colorado, so how's he going to change it? Well, a lot of people probably didn't want to go to Jackson State, and I can guarantee you that recruits weren't going to be flipping from Florida State to Jackson State if Deion Sanders wasn't there. So yeah. I think it's a great hire. I think it's awesome for Deion. Another thing that I hate seeing is, people are saying that he bailed on Jackson State and the HBCUs and all of that stuff. That this is what coaches do. This is how coaches go throughout their career. If you get an opportunity to elevate your career, anyone who's listening to this in whatever field you are in, you will take that opportunity. I think it's a great hire. I did not anticipate him going to Colorado. That one surprised me a little bit. I know Deion hates the cold. However, I think it's a great fit, and I'm excited to see the kind of reviving culture at Colorado and in Boulder.
The worst part of this is this idea that people have come up with in their brains, and I don't know how people get to these places, that Colorado is a dead-end program and can never win in
Right.
the Pac-12. First of all, Utah just won their second straight Pac-12 championship. If you can win the Pac-12 in the state of Utah, you can win it in the state of Colorado. There's absolutely no intrinsic value to being in Utah outside of the quality of coaching they get. So if you can win in Utah, it can be won in Colorado. And can you get players? Well, Deion has proven that he can. And I grew up in a time where Colorado was a player. Colorado was a thing. They split the 1990 national championship. The 94 Colorado team would go down as it is one of the most exciting teams in the history of my life. They had a quarterback, Cordell Stewart. They had Rashawn Salam, who won the Heisman. They had Michael Westbrook, a receiver. They were an incredible video game team. And if they made it to like the PlayStation 2 version of NCAA, they would have been the greatest PS2 team of all time. Anyway, Colorado has been a team before that mattered, and they can do it again. And I think Deion, listen, I don't know if a lot of teams were excited about the prospect of hiring Deion Sanders because I think of the amount of control he's probably going to want, of the amount that he's going to change things there. So Colorado's got nothing to lose, though.
Nothing to lose. Like it's such a winning situation for them. And even if he's only there for, 3-4 years, whatever it may be, it's going to put them back on the map. Another interesting wrinkle with this, with all the conference realignment that's happening, we don't know what the Pac-12 is going to look like. We know USC and UCLA are going to the Big Ten. So that immediately takes, two teams off the table who are these, name programs, especially USC, to open up the Pac-12 for somebody else. And yes, obviously you have Oregon, you have Washington, you go down that list. I understand that. But to say that Colorado is just always going to be a dead dog no matter what is just not true. And there are, I'm old, Brandon, you're old, Jack and Katie, you're not old, but you are older than high school. There are so many players that'll get to see Deion. And I understand that Deion, played in the league whenever I was a baby, but to see what he's done with his career and the program that he built at Jackson State and want to play for a guy like that, regardless of where he is. And now he's in the Power 5. So there's a lot of things going to it, but nothing to lose for Colorado. I think it's great.
All right. I think that's a good, go ahead. Jake. I'm sorry.
What's the expectation for Colorado, and how long do you think Deion will be at Colorado?
Well, I don't know how to answer that question because they're the team that gives him his Power 5 opportunity, and they're going to, like, Jackson State gave him the coaching opportunity, but Jackson State can't pay what other schools can pay. Colorado's giving him a Power 5 opportunity and might be able to pay him $10 million a year down the line. So, like, I don't know. I have no idea about that. But when it comes to Colorado, and can they turn around quick? Yeah. This is a miniature version of the Lincoln Riley transition. Lincoln Riley last year, Lincoln Riley had playoff experience, and we know he can coach at this level. Deion doesn't have that yet, but Deion is going to have a talent infusion that rivals what Lincoln Riley did. Players want to play for Deion. Their parents, these players' parents want to see their son play for Deion. That's probably the key thing. They want to see their son play for Deion. He got Travis Hunter, the #1 recruit in the country, to go to Jackson State.
Right.
He's going to get every 4 and 5 star that he ever got to Jackson State. They're going with him immediately. I'm sure Shedeur Sanders will be their quarterback next year. And then he's going to, if you're a transfer on the West Coast or anywhere, you get a chance to play for Deion Sanders, you're going to do it. I would say they're going to get 30 talented players out of this deal this season. Immediately.
And when you talk about expectations for the program, I mean, obviously they're one of the worst programs in the country right now, dead last in the Pac-12. Just the fact that we're talking about Colorado, that every single show yesterday and this whole week waiting for the anticipation of if he was going to announce if he was taking that job or not, everyone's talking about, like, look what's going to happen at Colorado with Deion Sanders. That doesn't happen if you just hire a guy that's just somewhere in the coaching tree that you can just pull out off the carousel. I think that they Dave tweeted that he thinks they make the playoff in the next few years. I think that's a lofty goal. However, I do think that they're a player in the Pac-12 almost immediately.
Well, he's now going to be going against coaches that can match his talent acquisition.
Right.
He's going to be playing against coaches that have been here before. So it's going to be a difficult rise for him, but I don't see why. Like, unnecessary reference, Jack, you just tweeted this a couple minutes ago. Top 15 class of 2025 recruit Winston Watkins Jr. has committed to play for Deion Sanders at Colorado. He was previously committed to play at Texas A&M. So what are we doing, Kate? He's already. That's a 2025 guy. That's a
shoot me
sophomore in high
dead.
school. That's a sophomore in high school.
Shoot me dead.
That guy just wants some retweets and Instagram followers.
That's fine. But, it's just like, haven't I been through enough? Have I not?
Casey, can you text Deion one question for me?
Yeah. What do you want me to say?
I want to know if he's scared of Ralphie, the Buffalo.
Oh, that's a great question. Okay.
Because that Buffalo be running on the sidelines. Like I don't see Deion. Deion can't move like he used to now. I'm just a little worried about it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, he even before his really bad injury that he had, the situation where he got so sick and almost lost his foot. All the fucking assholes out there, they're like, oh, it's just an ankle. Like, fuck you. Now he's not. He's still on like rehabbing that foot. That Buffalo can run now.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I'll ask him. Obviously, he probably won't answer right away since he's busy, but I will ask him.
All right.
A few more news items. This one's not official, but I feel like this is the most important. Remember all the back and forth with Missouri and Kansas?
Yeah.
Someone just said sources have told 24/7 Sports that Wake Forest will play Missouri in the Gasparilla Bowl. So Missouri's mentioned, but other official ones have been.
Boo.
Yeah, that'll be a fun time for the timeline. Are Fresno State versus Washington State in the LA Bowl, a South Alabama, Western Kentucky in the New Orleans Bowl, Houston versus Louisiana Independence Bowl, Boise State versus North Texas and Frisco Bowl, Troy versus UTSA in the Cure.
Oh, that'll be pretty good, actually.
Yeah, everyone was like, that's a great one.
Yeah.
BYU versus SMU in the New Mexico Bowl, Southern Miss versus Rice Lending Tree Bowl. But I think that if Kansas and Missouri, if that one's actually right about with Wake Forest.
Quickly, I know we need to go so we can get the episode out. The Kansas and Missouri situation is just, it continues on with any rival that is petty to not play each other. Play the fucking game. People would be loving that bowl game that do not care to watch Kansas or Missouri play in a bowl game. If they play each other, they will play. I don't care who you are. And yes, I'm wearing it on my chest quite literally right now. Stop being petty. Play your rival that you hate. It's more fun for the sport and it's better for everybody that's watching.
All right. That's a good stopping point. On our next episode, which will be, I guess it'll be, I don't know. We'll decide later. We'll decide.
Talk about it off air.
I'm kind of leaning towards staying at 3, guys. Whatever. We'll talk about it.
I'll do whatever is best. Whatever we also need to probably talk to sales and talk to data and talk to the people that are smarter than us.
And need to book rooms.
I don't think there's any guarantee that the people in sales are smarter than us. Anyway.
I mean, the data people.
Oh, data, sure. Data, but sales hasn't impressed me. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I'm just kidding.
You know what you should do, Brandon? You know what you should do? You should rank your salespeople.
Oh, yeah, like I know the salespeople. All right. I like burger.
Thank you to the sales team for always putting us.
Yes, we love the sales.
Yes.
We love the sales team.
Hey, obviously, no, I'm joking. I'm doing a sore wrestling bit.
We love the sales team.
All right, that's the show. That's Unnecessary Roughness.